On the glowing jungle moon of Virales 9, the evening sky shimmered with soft blue light as thousands of tiny fire petals drifted through the humid air like floating stars. The giant silver-leaf trees gently swayed in the cool breeze, their crystal sap glowing like lanterns hanging from nature's own ceiling. The alien families gathered near the clearing, their fur catching the soft light, their eyes warm with the calm of a peaceful night. Their little cubs chased each other between the large glowing roots, laughing in high-pitched squeaks, batting at fire petals as if playing with falling stars. Mothers watched fondly, fathers leaned back against the warm rocks, and elders told stories about old legends. Everything was calm. Everything was safe. No one expected the night to break. Not so suddenly. Not so violently. And not because of a human. A single human traveler stood near the edge of the clearing, leaning against a thick vine, his jacket dusty from long walks through the wild. He had come to Virales 9 only to observe wildlife, a peaceful research mission. He wasn't a warrior. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't someone who wanted trouble. He moved with gentle steps, careful not to disturb the small glowing insects that crawled by. His name didn't matter. His past didn't matter. He was simply a quiet human, one of the few allowed to visit this moon. The aliens trusted humans. Humans were known for curiosity, not violence. For peace, not fury. For learning, not war. That is what the galaxy believed. That is what this jungle believed. That is what the poachers thought. And they were wrong. The human lifted his camera, focusing on a pair of tiny cubs climbing a glowing root. Their fur was bright gold, their eyes big with innocence. He smiled softly behind the lens, whispering to himself, "Beautiful." But then, something changed. The fire petals stopped drifting. The breeze stopped moving. Even the glowing trees seemed to dim slightly as if they sensed a danger the parents did not see yet. The cubs paused in their play. Their little ears twitched. Their tails stiffened. One cub looked toward the shadows and squeaked nervously. The human felt it too. A quiet pressure. A strange heaviness in the air. Like the moment before lightning strikes. He lowered his camera, scanning the jungle line. The alien parents noticed the shift in their children and stood slowly, their eyes narrowing, their bodies tensing. The elders fell silent mid-story. The breeze carried no sound, no birds, no insects, not even the distant hum of the sap rivers. Something was wrong. Then the ground rumbled softly. A vibration, quick, sharp, metallic. The human recognized that sound instantly. Engines. Not peaceful ones. Not legal ones. Engines designed for quick escapes, silent landings, and dirty work. The kind smugglers used. Poachers. Before anyone could react, 3 armored hover skiffs burst through the glowing trees, their engines screaming as they descended over the clearing. Dust and blue leaves sprayed everywhere. The cubs shrieked and scattered. Parents roared. Elders rushed forward to shield the young. But the poachers were prepared. They dropped from the skiffs like shadows, 7 tall armored aliens wearing black helmets, carrying energy nets glowing with red light. These weren't local hunters. These were professional off-world poachers, known across the galaxy for stealing rare creatures, selling them to cruel collectors, or experimenting on them for profit. Virales 9 cubs were valuable. Extremely valuable. The human felt his stomach twist. He had heard rumors about poachers, but he had never seen them this close. The poachers moved fast, faster than the parents could react. One cub tried to run to its mother, but an energy net wrapped around it and tightened, lifting the screaming little creature into the air. Another poacher grabbed 2 more cubs at once. Another net flew across the clearing, trapping a pair of twins who cried out for help. Within seconds, only seconds, 6 cubs were caught in glowing red cages, hovering inches above the ground, their little bodies curled in fear as the energy crackled around them. The alien parents roared and charged, but the poachers fired shock blasts into the ground, knocking them back violently. The human stepped forward instinctively, his heart racing. "Stop!" he shouted. The poachers turned toward him, their helmets shining. The leader tilted his head mockingly. "A human," he said in a voice dripping with amusement. "Look at that." Another laughed. What's he going to do? Write about us. The human clenched his fists. Let them go, he said softly, but his voice carried a tremble of anger. The poachers ignored him, shoving him aside like he was a harmless piece of paper. He stumbled but didn't fall. He kept his eyes on the trapped cubs. Their tiny hands reached through the glowing bars, trembling, desperately trying to grab the air for help. One of the cubs, smallest of all, pressed its tiny paw against the cage wall and reached toward the human. Its eyes were wet, wide, terrified. Something inside the human cracked. Something old. Something buried. Something humans never showed in peaceful missions. He felt it in his bones first. A heavy, slow, terrifying heartbeat. Once. Twice. Again. His breath deepened. His vision sharpened. His fingers curled so tightly his nails cut into his palms. The poachers kept laughing. Weak species, one spat. Useless observers, another sneered. Good for running research and hiding from wars. The leader turned to the human with a smirk. Go back to recording trees, little human. The human looked up. Slowly, very slowly. And when he met the leader's helmeted eyes, there was something behind his stare that made even the poacher pause for a moment. A strange, dangerous stillness. The human stepped forward. Put them down. He didn't shout. He didn't scream. But every glowing leaf in the clearing seemed to freeze in place, suspended in the air as if the moon itself held its breath. The alien parents stared at him. The cubs stared at him. Even the poachers stared at him, not afraid yet, but confused. Humans didn't talk like that. Humans didn't sound like that. Humans didn't move like that. Something in his voice wasn't normal. Something in his eyes wasn't peaceful. Something had awakened. The human took another step. His jaw clenched. His shoulders tightened. His heartbeat beat louder, faster, deeper, shaking through the ground under him like distant thunder. The poachers finally understood one thing. This was no normal human. Is he angry? One poacher said quietly. The leader scoffed. Humans don't get angry. They panic. But the leader's voice wasn't steady, because the human was walking toward them with a calm so dark, so cold, so deadly that even the glowing trees dimmed around him. The human's daughter wasn't here. His home wasn't here. His world wasn't here. And still, he stepped forward as if protecting those cubs was the only thing that mattered in the entire galaxy. The smallest cub cried again, reaching out. The human's breath shook once. Something ancient opened inside him. Something that every human carried deep in their DNA. A protective fury born from generations of surviving impossible odds. The kind of fury that made early humans fight beasts 10 times their size. The kind of fury that made humans cross oceans, mountains, and skies. The kind of fury alien species forgot humans had. He whispered one more time, voice shaking the air around him. Last warning, put them down. The poachers aimed their shock guns at him. Parents screamed. Cubs cried. But the human did not move back. He moved forward. And in that moment, the jungle moon Virales 9 saw something no alien had ever believed before. The quiet human was turning into something else. Something fierce. Something unstoppable. Something terrifying. Something the galaxy had forgotten humans could become when innocent lives were hurt. And the poachers would be the first to learn what it meant when a human finally snapped. The jungle stayed silent. The air froze. The cubs cried. And the human took one final step, the step that would change the entire galaxy's opinion of humanity forever. The poachers stood frozen for a moment, shocked that a human, one of the so-called quiet species, had dared to speak against them, and the jungle itself seemed to listen as the words put them down echoed softly through the glowing trees. The alien parents clung to each other, trembling with helplessness, their eyes flicking between the cages holding their crying cubs and the lone human who now stepped forward with a calmness that didn't match the fire rising inside him. The poachers exchanged looks before bursting into mocking laughter, calling him pathetic, weak, soft-skinned, too fragile to fight. But the human didn't flinch. He didn't blink. He simply stood there, shoulders rising slowly with each deep breath, his eyes locked on the smallest cub who pressed her tiny hands against the energy barrier, sobbing. Something inside the human shifted, an instinct older than any law in the galaxy, a human instinct that had been buried under centuries of peace but never truly died. His fingers curled into fists, and for a moment he felt the weight of every scream, every cry for help, every innocent life begging for someone to protect them, and he realized how little it took for humanity to wake its ancient fire. One helpless child in danger. One poacher stepped forward, tall and covered in armor shaped like jagged stone, pointing a weapon at the human's chest, mocking him for being a soft earth creature who thinks feelings are strength. The human didn't move. He didn't care about the weapon, the armor, or the cruelty dripping from their voices. Instead, he lowered his backpack, slowly and silently, placing it on the ground with a precision that made the aliens pause. His heartbeat slowed, not in fear but in focus. The parents behind him whispered warnings, trying to pull him back, but his feet remained planted like roots in the soil. The poacher shoved him, expecting him to fall, but the human barely moved an inch, his jaw tightening, his eyes blazing with something cold and terrifying. The second shove came harder, this time knocking leaves from the branches above, but before the poacher could laugh again, the human grabbed his wrist, just one hand, and squeezed. The crack was loud. Too loud. The poacher screamed, dropping his weapon as his armored wrist bent at an unnatural angle. The other poachers stopped laughing. They stared. Nobody had ever seen a human move like that. Nobody had heard bones crack under human strength. The parents gasped, covering their mouths, their eyes wide with disbelief because the calm human traveler who had been quietly recording butterflies minutes earlier had become someone else entirely. But the human wasn't done. He stepped between the poachers and the cages, placing himself as a living shield, his voice low and steady as he repeated, "Last warning. Put them down." The poachers cursed, threatened, and roared, but fear crept into their eyes. Fear of something they didn't understand. Humans were supposed to be peaceful, predictable, emotionally soft. Not this. Not a force that stood unshaken before armed raiders. Not a creature whose heartbeat grew quieter the more danger surrounded him. The human's daughter-like memory flashed in his mind. Earth children laughing, families safe, the warmth of protecting someone who trusted you, and suddenly everything became painfully clear. These alien cubs were no different than human children. The universe might change the shape, the color, or the species, but innocence was universal. And innocence deserved protection. The bravest poacher raised his blaster and fired. The beam shot forward in a bright flash, but the human moved before thought, before instinct, before fear. He grabbed the nearest metal crate lid and shielded himself, the blast ricocheting into a tree that exploded in sparks. Everyone froze again. The poacher fired again, and again the human blocked it, pushing forward step by step as raw adrenaline surged through every muscle. His breath grew heavier, but not from panic. This was something older, something primal, something humanity once used to survive impossible worlds. That he reached the poacher in 4 steps, that he grabbed the weapon, that he crushed it. Piece by piece. Like it was made of paper. The poacher stumbled backward, terrified, falling into the dirt, scrambling away from the human whose eyes now glowed with a level of determination the galaxy rarely saw. The other poachers charged together, trying to overwhelm him with numbers, but the human moved like water, like lightning, grabbing one by the collar and throwing him across the clearing, flipping another over his shoulder so hard the ground shook when he landed. Every hit the human took only made him move faster, stronger, as if every bruise reminded him of why he was fighting. One cub screamed for help again, and that scream hit him like fire, pushing him beyond every limit he had ever known. That he grabbed the last attacking poacher by the chest, slamming him against a glowing tree so hard the leaves burst into shimmering dust. "Open the cages." His voice was no longer soft. It carried across the entire jungle like thunder. The remaining poacher, shaking violently, reached for the control pad, his hands trembling so badly he could barely press the buttons. With one tap, the energy cages flickered, then collapsed. The cubs ran out instantly, sprinting to their parents, who fell to the ground hugging them, sobbing in relief, their tails wrapping around them protectively. The human stood in the center of the clearing, chest rising and falling with heavy breaths, his fists still clenched, his eyes still burning with fierce fury. The poachers lay scattered around him, groaning, injured, but alive. He had held himself back. He had fought with precision, with control, with the exact amount of force needed to protect without killing. That was the part that terrified the poachers most. They expected a raging monster. Instead, they found something far more dangerous, a human who knew how to control his rage. The parents slowly approached him, their voices trembling with gratitude, offering him their hands, their blessings, their thanks in languages he didn't understand. But the human shook his head gently, looking at the cubs first, checking their injuries, kneeling to wipe tears from the smallest one who clung to his sleeve with tiny alien claws. His touch softened instantly, his voice shifting back to the calm, gentle tone he always used. "You're safe now," he whispered. The cub nodded, tears glittering in her eyes. But before he could say another word, the jungle lights dimmed again. Something else was watching, something worse, and when the parents looked up, their faces drained of color from the shadows of the forest, dozens of red targeting lasers appeared, landing on the human's chest, arms, legs, head, marking him like prey. The poachers he defeated were only the first wave, and now the real hunters had arrived. The human stood in the ruined clearing, breathing hard, his knuckles cracked and bleeding, the dust of broken cages floating around him like smoke after a storm, and the alien parents clutched their cubs with trembling arms, unable to understand how a single human had done what entire patrol teams often fail to do. The forest around them felt alive again but shaken, the glowing trees flickering as if reacting to the violence that had taken place moments earlier. The rescued cubs cried softly, their small bodies shaking from shock, and the human knelt down to them slowly, carefully, as if afraid his own strength might scare them. But instead of fear, one cub reached out again and placed its tiny paw against his hand, trusting him completely, and that simple touch made his throat tighten with an emotion he hadn't felt in years. He whispered, "You're safe," even though his voice trembled like someone holding back memories he didn't want to remember. Behind him, 3 wounded poachers lay groaning, tied with vines, terrified now, not of the alien parents, but of the human who stood like a silent storm, body still tense, eyes still burning with that strange fury that had taken over him earlier. Every alien parent watched him in silence, their chests heaving, their eyes wide with disbelief, wondering how a species the galaxy always mocked for being fragile could carry such terrifying strength when pushed. The alien mother of the smallest cub stepped forward slowly, her legs shaking as she approached the human, and she bowed her head in deep respect, a gesture rarely given to anyone, let alone a different species. The human shook his head, saying softly that he didn't do it for honor or thanks. He did it because the cubs were scared and nobody deserved to be taken like that. But even as he said it, he felt a tremor in his own hands, something dark and heavy that he couldn't explain, something that had awakened inside him the moment he saw those cubs reaching out for help. The alien father stepped closer, noticing the human's trembling, and hesitated before asking, "Why did your eyes change?" The human looked up sharply, confused. "Change?" The father nodded. "When you faced the poachers, your eyes were not like before. They were brighter, fierce, alive in a way I've never seen in any species." The human swallowed, not answering, because he didn't know how to explain it himself. All he knew was that something inside him had snapped when he saw the cubs trapped, something ancient and instinctive, something he had spent years burying deep within himself. He stood up, trying to calm the painful pounding of his heart, but every beat felt like an echo of the fury he had unleashed. The alien mother looked at him carefully, her voice soft but full of respect. "You fought like a protector, like someone who has lost cubs before." The human froze. His eyes lowered. His breath hitched for a second. And for a moment, he didn't speak at all. The forest wind carried the heavy silence between them. The alien parents looked at him with sudden understanding. This human wasn't fighting because he wanted to be a hero. He fought because he had once felt the same helplessness these parents felt today. After a long moment, the human whispered, voice cracking, "I lost someone, long ago." He didn't say more, didn't give details, didn't describe the grief carved into his bones, but he didn't need to. The pain in his voice was enough. The alien parents bowed their heads again, not out of gratitude this time, but out of shared grief. The forest remained silent, the glowing trees dimming softly as if honoring the memory he spoke of without words. Suddenly, a noise echoed through the trees. Metal clicking, engines humming, voices approaching. The human instantly stepped in front of the alien families, his eyes sharp again, ready to fight, ready to protect. But these weren't poachers. They were government patrol soldiers of Virales 9, armored and armed, rushing into the clearing with scanners raised and rifles ready. When they saw the tied-up poachers on the ground and the broken cages scattered everywhere, their eyes widened in shock. One officer approached the humans slowly, carefully, as though approaching a wild force that had yet to calm. "Did you do this?" he asked with disbelief. The human didn't answer right away. His breath was still uneven, his fists still clenched, his body still radiating the last remnants of the fury that had consumed him. Before he could speak, the alien mother stepped forward, her voice strong and clear. "He saved our children. Alone." The officers stared at the human as if seeing a creature out of legend. Humans were known for curiosity, stubbornness, and strange humor, but not for this. Not for raw, overwhelming, terrifying strength that defied logic. The officer swallowed and ordered his team to take the poachers away, but he kept glancing at the human like he was trying to understand if this man was truly what he appeared or something else entirely. When the officers left with the captured poachers, the forest quieted again. The human finally relaxed his shoulders, but inside, he felt uneasy. Something inside him was changing, something he didn't understand yet. He tried to walk away, wanting space, wanting air, wanting to calm the storm still moving under his skin. But the cubs whimpered softly, reaching toward him with tiny paws. He stopped. He turned. And he knelt again, letting the smallest cub crawl into his arms, trembling not from fear but from relief. The alien mother watched this with tears in her eyes, whispering to her mate, "This human, he carries a rage deeper than any warrior I've seen. But he uses it to protect, not to destroy." The father nodded slowly, watching the human cradle the cub with both strength and gentleness. "Yes," he said, "and that makes him more dangerous than any predator in this galaxy." As the human held the cub close, he felt his chest tighten with an ache he thought he had buried long ago. An ache that whispered of someone he once held the same way. He closed his eyes, fighting the sting of old memories. And as the glowing trees surrounded him with soft blue light, with alien parents silently thanking him, with cubs clinging to him like he was their shield against the universe, the human knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Something was coming. Something big. And whatever it was, it had awakened the part of him the galaxy should have never seen. The alien poachers froze for a moment, shocked by the human's sudden strength. But then the leader snarled and ordered his soldiers to attack, yet the human didn't wait, didn't think, didn't hesitate. He charged forward with a roar that didn't sound human at all, grabbing one soldier by the throat and slamming him into the glowing roots of a Virales tree so hard the air itself shook, and the alien collapsed, gasping and unconscious. The cubs watched with wide, terrified eyes, their tiny claws pressed against the energy cages as they cried for help, and the parents stared in disbelief because they had never seen a human fight, never seen one move like a storm breaking through the quiet night. The leader shouted again, firing an energy bolt at the human's chest, and for a heartbeat everyone thought the human would fall, except he didn't. He twisted at the last second, the bolt grazing his shoulder and burning through his jacket. But still he kept moving, eyes sharp, breathing heavy, anger rising inside him like fire climbing through dry wood. He grabbed a fallen spear, spun it through his hands, and struck the nearest poacher so hard the alien flew backward into a stone pillar. The parents hid their faces, shocked that a human could do this, that someone so soft-spoken could unleash this power. The leader roared in fury and lunged at the human with twin blades, sparks flying as they clashed. The human's hands trembled, not from fear but from something deeper, something old, something inside his blood that remembered every war humanity had ever fought. The leader was stronger, heavier, faster, but the human was relentless, ducking under every swing, stepping forward every time the alien stepped back, pushing himself harder because every cry from the cubs stabbed his heart like a blade. One cub screamed loud, a sound filled with terror, and hearing it made the human snap completely. He kicked the leader's knee sideways, grabbed his arm, twisted sharply, and the blade clattered to the ground. The other poachers hesitated now, fear growing in their eyes as they watched the human overpower their commander with nothing but raw fury and willpower. The human's breathing was ragged now, his eyes burning with the kind of rage that came only from protecting something innocent. The leader tried to crawl away, begging his soldiers to help, but none moved. They were staring at the human as if he were no longer a simple traveler but a creature built entirely of violence. The human stepped toward the cages, shaking from battle, and the cubs reached out for him, their small paws trembling. He placed his hand on the cage door, the energy buzzing under his fingers, and the alien parents cried out, telling him to stop because no one could break a poacher cage. But the human didn't stop. He pressed harder. The energy sparked, crackling against his skin, burning it, blistering it, yet he didn't pull back. He gritted his teeth, muscles tight, veins rising on his arms as he pushed with everything inside him, and then, with a loud, shattering pop, the cage collapsed. Everyone gasped. The cub inside leaped into his arms, burying its tiny head against his chest as it cried in relief. The other poachers panicked now, taking a step back, realizing the human wasn't stopping. He smashed the second cage with his burned hand, then the third, then the fourth, freeing each cub one by one until all 6 were clinging to him, climbing around him, crying into his shirt as if he were their parent returned from death. The parents ran forward, stumbling, crying, gathering their babies into their arms, thanking him in shaking voices. The human stepped back, blood dripping from his arm, sweat rolling down his forehead, but he didn't rest. He stared at the remaining poachers with eyes so dark, so full of warning, that even the bravest of them stepped away, hands raised, ready to flee. But before they could run, the human spoke again, voice low and shaking with anger. "If you come back, if you ever touch cubs again, I will end you." The forest fell completely silent. Even the glowing trees dimmed for a moment, as if the jungle itself listened to his promise. The poachers ran, crashing through the bushes, dropping their weapons in fear, desperate to escape the human who had become something they never imagined, humanity's fury made real. The alien families gathered around him slowly, cautiously, because they had never seen a human like this, never seen one fight like a warrior from legend. The oldest parent stepped forward, eyes full of tears, placing a trembling hand on the human's shoulder. "We did not know humans could feel like this." The human swallowed hard, his voice breaking as he whispered, "Don't thank me, thank them." He pointed at the cubs now safe in their parents' arms. "They are the ones who woke me up." The parents looked at him with awe, respect, and something else, something like fear mixed with appreciation, because they realized the human wasn't just protecting them. He was warning the galaxy, and the galaxy, whether ready or not, was about to learn what it meant to threaten a human's heart. The human stood alone in the center of the broken clearing, chest rising and falling with slow, controlled breaths, his hands trembling not from fear but from the weight of what he had just done, while around him the alien parents held their rescued cubs tightly, crying, shaking, whispering thanks in soft, broken voices. But he didn't turn to them, didn't bow, didn't take any praise. His eyes stayed fixed on the torn branches and the crushed ground where the last poacher had fled, because deep inside he felt something wasn't over yet. Something in the jungle air still carried danger, a silent pressure that made his instincts burn. The cub he saved earlier climbed weakly into his arms, its small glowing eyes staring up at him with trust no alien had ever shown a human before, and he closed his arms around it carefully, feeling how small and fragile it was, how easily it could have died, how easily everything could have been lost. The alien mother stepped forward, tears sliding down her ridged cheeks as she whispered, why did you fight for them? They are not even your species." The human didn't answer at first. He simply looked at the cub in his arms, remembering something painful, something from Earth long ago, something that twisted his chest with old grief. He swallowed hard and whispered, "Because no child, anywhere in this galaxy, deserves to cry alone." His voice cracked slightly at the end, and the alien mother covered her mouth, stunned by the raw hurt in his tone. But before she could speak again, a deep rumble rolled across the sky, shaking leaves, vibrating through the ground. The aliens gasped. The humans' eyes narrowed. The sound came again, louder this time, like engines warming up, like machines preparing for war. He handed the cub gently back to its mother and stepped forward, scanning the tree line, his body stiff, ready, alert. Suddenly, a bright red flare shot into the sky from far beyond the forest, exploding into a signal the aliens recognized instantly: poacher reinforcements. Panic spread among the families. Parents clustered together, clutching their young tightly. Some shouted to run. Some cried. Some simply froze. But the human didn't move from his spot. He stood tall, still, unshakable. The elder alien, trembling, said, "There are dozens of them. Maybe more. Please, human, come with us. We must hide." But the human shook his head slowly, eyes sharp. "If we run, they will track us. If we hide, they will find us." His voice was calm, but the strength behind it made the aliens stare at him with new fear. Not fear of him, but fear for him. The elder stepped closer. "You fought a small group, human. But what is coming now? Even our warriors avoid them. This is not your fight." The human took a slow breath, clenching his fists as he watched shadows moving between the glowing trees. "It became my fight," he said quietly, "the moment they touched the cubs." Something in his voice, something dark, old, and burning, made the aliens fall silent. The wind shifted. The branches swayed. The jungle itself seemed to lean in, sensing the coming storm. A metallic roar split through the air, and suddenly dozens of armored poachers burst through the tree line, their exosuits glowing red, their helmets reflecting the dim forest light as they marched in perfect formation. The surviving poacher from earlier stepped forward, pointing at the human with a shaking hand. "That one," he snarled. "He killed my squad. Take him alive. We'll make an example of him." The alien family screamed and backed away, clutching their cubs. The human stepped forward alone, planting his feet firmly into the earth. The lead poacher laughed cruelly. "You?" he mocked. "A tiny earth creature? Do you think this is bravery?" The human didn't blink. "No," he whispered. "This is a warning." The poachers paused. Something in his voice made the air colder. Then the human said something that made even the trees seem to stop moving. "You should not have taken the cubs." The lead poacher barked an order, and 30 armored soldiers rushed forward like a storm. Alien parents covered their children. Some screamed. Some prayed. Some looked away, unable to watch what they believed would be the death of the human who saved them. But the human didn't step back. He moved forward. One step, then another. And then he charged. What followed didn't look like anything the aliens had seen before. The human's movements were fast, too fast, like something ancient, something primal, something from Earth's darkest instincts had taken control. He dropped low, slammed his shoulder into the first poacher's waist so hard the armor cracked, then grabbed another by the helmet and slammed him into a tree, breaking the metal like it was bone. He ducked a laser strike, rolled under a swinging metal gauntlet, and kicked another poacher so hard the alien crashed through the branches in a spray of splinters. The aliens watching could barely breathe. The cubs clung to their mothers. The poachers hesitated, shocked that a single human, a species they mocked, was destroying them. "This is impossible," one shouted. But the human kept moving, faster, harder, striking with fury not born from anger but from pure protection. Every hit carried a message: don't touch them. Don't touch any child. Not in my presence. When the last poacher collapsed into the dirt, groaning, defeated, the human stood in the middle of the ruined clearing, chest heaving, bruised but unbroken. The jungle fell silent again. The aliens stared at him with wide, trembling eyes, not with fear, but with awe. The elder alien stepped forward, voice shaking. "Human, what are you?" The human wiped blood from his lip and whispered, "Someone who knows what it means to lose a child." And those few words hit harder than any punch he had thrown. The aliens understood then that behind his fury wasn't power, it was pain. The jungle moon trembled with silence as the human stood alone in the clearing, his chest rising with slow, controlled breaths while the injured cub lay against his leg, its tiny claws gripping his pants like he was the only safe thing left in a world suddenly filled with danger, and around him alien parents watched with wide, shaking eyes, unable to believe a human, one of the so-called gentle species, had just defeated armed poachers with nothing but raw fury and instinct. Yet the danger wasn't over, because deep inside the forest, where the shadows grew thicker and the light grew colder, the poachers had sent a distress signal to their base, calling for reinforcements, calling for backup, calling for someone even worse. The human knew it. He felt it in the air, the same way an Earth predator senses when something bigger is coming. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched, and his heart thumped with a rhythm that wasn't fear but something darker, something older, something that came from a place in the human spirit most species in the galaxy didn't even know existed. The alien father limped toward him, holding his injured mate close, his voice shaking as he whispered, "Human, you must leave. They will come for you. You have done enough." But the human shook his head slowly, eyes focused on the tree line, scanning every shifting shadow. "Not until every cub is safe," he said softly, though there was nothing soft about the tone. It carried weight, a weight that made even the trees seem to hold still. The alien mother looked at him with disbelief and fear mixed together. "You don't understand. They don't forgive. They don't retreat. They will send hunters. They will send killers." The human didn't turn. He simply whispered, "Let them come." And the aliens all felt something strange then. Not arrogance, not anger, but a quiet, terrifying certainty. The human wasn't bluffing. He was ready. A distant rumble shook the ground. Heavy boots. Metal armor. Weapon cores heating. The human gently pushed the little cub behind him, placing his hand over its tiny head. "Stay down," he whispered, and the cub, trembling but trusting, obeyed without question. Behind him the alien parents tried to hide their children under glowing leaves, covering them with their own bodies, but their eyes kept returning to the lone human standing in the open, one man facing an approaching army. The rumble grew louder. Birds burst from the treetops, fleeing in panic. And then from between the giant roots, the poacher reinforcements marched into the clearing, 12 armored aliens with heavy rifles, shock batons, and electrified nets designed to trap even the strongest beasts. Their leader, a massive alien with plated skin and red markings across his chest, stepped forward, smirking when he saw the human standing there. "You?" he growled. "A human stopped my men." He laughed loudly, but no one joined him. He pointed his weapon at the human, amused. "Move aside, little softskin. This is not your fight." The human said nothing, just breathed. Slow, deep, controlled. The leader sneered. "Or do you want to die protecting animals that aren't even your species?" Still the human didn't move. The leader raised his voice. "This is your last warning, human. Move, or we break you." The jungle held its breath. The cubs whimpered. The alien parents clung to each other, tears shining in their eyes. And finally, the human spoke. His voice was low, steady, almost calm, but his words sliced through the air like a blade. "You hurt children." He lifted his head slowly. His eyes were different now, harder, darker, filled with the kind of anger that scared even the bravest warriors. "And you're not leaving this jungle with them." The leader scoffed. "Then you die." He raised his rifle, but before he could fire, the human moved. Not fast, not sudden, not wild, but with purpose, with clarity, with the terrifying focus of someone who had made a decision and cut away every other option from his mind. He stepped forward, placing himself directly between the poachers and the alien cubs. Dozens of weapons locked onto him instantly, red dots marking his chest, his head, his heart, but the human didn't flinch. Not even once. The leader bared his teeth. "You think your little strength is enough to stop us?" The human finally looked up fully, and every alien in the clearing felt a wave of something cold wash over them. Because in his eyes they didn't see fear, or surrender, or weakness. They saw something ancient. Something that had survived countless wars on Earth. Something that had evolved through hardship, through hunger, through fire. Something that lived inside every human but rarely awakened. Fury. Not the fury of rage. The fury of protection. The fury of a species that once fought predators 10 times their size and survived. The fury of a species that crossed oceans, climbed mountains, built civilizations, and defended their young with their own blood. The leader took a step back without meaning to. "What are you?" he whispered. The human answered quietly, "Human." And then the ground shook again, not from enemies this time, but from something else. The alien parents gasped. The poachers froze. Even the cubs looked up. From deep inside the jungle, a massive figure appeared, an elder beast of Virales 9, drawn by the cries of the young. A creature so large its footsteps made the trees tremble. A creature that should have been raging with violence. But when its glowing eyes fell on the human standing in front of the cubs, it bowed its head. Just slightly. Just enough. As if the jungle itself acknowledged who the real protector was. The leader hissed, anger and fear twisting in his voice. "Kill him." The poachers lifted their weapons. The human clenched his fists. And the galaxy, though far away, would soon hear the story of what happened next. The moment a single human faced an army and refused to move. The moment the jungle moon witnessed a fury no alien had ever seen before. The moment humanity showed why, once awakened, they are the most dangerous protectors in the universe. The jungle moon of Virales 9 felt different after the battle, as if the air itself remembered every scream, every roar, every impact made by the human who refused to bow to monsters who preyed on innocent cubs. And as the dust slowly settled and the night sky dimmed into a haunting silence, the alien parents held their trembling young tightly, whispering soft prayers of gratitude while stealing glances at the human who now stood covered in dirt, blood, bruises, and quiet rage. The surviving poachers lay scattered across the glowing roots, some unconscious, some too afraid to move, their weapons broken, their armor cracked from impacts they never imagined a human's bare fists could deliver. And the human stood over them with slow, shaking breaths, not out of fear but because the fury inside him still burned hot, refusing to calm even when the cubs were safe again. The largest alien parent, a tall creature with shimmering scales, stepped closer with hesitant steps, holding her rescued cub in her trembling arms, and the cub reached for the human again with tiny glowing paws, touching his leg with soft trust that made his chest tighten painfully. He dropped to one knee, exhausted, and the cub nuzzled against him as if sensing that despite the blood on his hands, this human was safety itself. The parents bowed low, something their species never did lightly, but he shook his head, whispering that he didn't deserve bows. He didn't fight for glory or recognition. He fought because in that moment, the cries of helpless children had torn through every layer of restraint humans normally held, and something ancient, something protective and terrifying, had taken over. But even as the cubs clung to him, the jungle leaves rustled with new movement, and out from the shadows arrived the Virales Council guards, tall armored warriors with glowing staffs, their faces stunned as they surveyed the battlefield. They expected to find a massacre of alien families and a human corpse. Instead, they found poachers defeated, cubs rescued, and a single human standing among them like a storm wearing flesh. Their leader, a powerful Viralan elder with deep blue markings over his eyes, stepped forward, eyes wide as he studied the shattered weapons and bent armor scattered around. "Who did this?" he whispered. One of the parents pointed quietly at the human, who wiped the blood from his knuckles and stood tall despite the pain. The guards looked at each other in disbelief. The elder approached him slowly, not with suspicion but with awe, asking gently, "Human, why? Why risk your life for our young?" For a long moment, the human didn't know how to answer. His breath was heavy, his heart still carrying the echo of fury, but when he looked at the cubs, tiny, innocent, trembling, his voice softened. "Because no child," he said quietly, "no matter the species, should scream like that." The elder bowed his head deeply, the highest honor of Virales, and the guards followed. But before anyone could say more, a deep tremor rolled through the ground, and a familiar whir of engines shook the treetops. Everyone turned toward the sky as ships descended, sleek, sharp, heavily armed. The remaining poachers had sent a distress call. Reinforcements arrived. The parents pulled the cubs close, guards formed a protective circle, but the humans stepped forward again, fists tightening, his jaw clenching, his eyes glowing with the same fire the jungle had witnessed earlier. The elder grabbed his arm. "Human, you have already given enough. Run. Hide. This fight is not yours." But the human shook his head slowly, his voice low and unwavering. "It became mine the moment they touched the cubs." The ships landed, doors hissing open, and dozens of armored poachers marched out, weapons raised, laughter echoing through the trees as they saw their defeated comrades. The leader, a massive alien with metallic skin and cruel eyes, stepped forward, sneering at the guards and parents. But when he saw the battered humans standing between them, he laughed cruelly. "This?" he mocked. "This soft thing fought you? This weak creature?" But the jungle held its breath, for it had seen what humans did when they were wronged. The humans stared back with chilling calm. "Try me." The poacher leader snarled and charged forward, swinging a massive electrified blade, and the guards yelled for the human to retreat, but he didn't move. Instead, he stepped into the attack with impossible speed, catching the alien's wrist with a force that made bone crack, then driving his forehead into the alien's jaw with a brutal snap. The leader stumbled back in shock, crimson fluid spilling, and before he could recover, the human threw him to the ground with a roar that echoed through the glowing forest. A roar filled with the fury of a species born on a death world, a species shaped by centuries of survival and war and stubborn, unstoppable will. Chaos erupted. Poachers swarmed forward, guards lifted their staffs, cubs screamed and hid under their parents. But the human became a moving storm, every punch like thunder, every kick like a strike of lightning, every breath filled with raw emotion that no alien had ever seen. He didn't fight with elegance. He fought with heart, with instinct, with the unstoppable force of someone defending children who weren't even his own species. And everyone, even the poachers, saw it clearly. Humans were not weak. Humans were not soft. Humans were born from fire and struggle and compassion so fierce it transformed into fury when the innocent were threatened. After a brutal, breathless battle, the remaining poachers fled into their ships, terrified, shouting that a death-world human was too dangerous to fight. Their engines roared as they escaped the planet entirely, leaving behind only their wounded pride and broken weapons. The jungle fell silent again. The guards stared at the human with awe. The elder, shaking from the shock of what he had witnessed, placed a hand over his heart and bowed deeply. "Human," he whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Our people will remember this night for 1,000 cycles. You have shown the galaxy what humans truly are." The human, exhausted and barely standing, wiped blood from his mouth and looked toward the cubs who peeked at him with glowing, grateful eyes. "I didn't do it to be remembered," he murmured, kneeling as the smallest cub crawled into his lap, purring softly. "I did it because someone had to." The parents cried softly. The guards lowered their heads. The elder whispered, "And the galaxy will never forget the night a human fought for alien children." And as the human finally collapsed into the glowing grass, breath trembling, the cubs curled around him in warmth, and the jungle moon whispered what the galaxy would soon learn. When humans choose to protect, they don't stop. Not for fear. Not for pain. Not for anything. Their fury becomes legend. The human stood in the center of the battlefield he created, the jungle floor cracked beneath his feet, smoke rising from the shattered poacher ships, the air trembling with the last echoes of his fury, and around him the rescued alien cubs clung to their parents, still shaking but safe, watching him with wide innocent eyes that could not understand how one quiet traveler had become something unstoppable. The alien families held each other tightly, whispering prayers of gratitude as they stared at the human who had fought like a storm, a force of nature, a living weapon, and yet now stood silently, chest rising and falling slowly as the ancient fire inside him dimmed. The survivors of Virales 9 gathered around him, not too close, because they still felt the heat of the rage that had shaken the ground minutes ago, but close enough to show respect, to show awe, to show fear mixed with gratitude, because none of them had expected a human to fight for alien children. None of them had expected a human to protect lives that did not belong to his species. And as the glowing trees shifted with the wind and light dust floated through the air, a mother alien stepped forward, her cub wrapped in her arms, tears filling her large shimmering eyes, and she whispered a thank you in her trembling voice. The human nodded quietly, looking down at the claw marks on his arms, the burns on his shirt, the blood drying on his knuckles, and then at the tiny cub he had shielded earlier, the one that had reached through the cage for him, the one who had cried help in a language he didn't even understand. The cub reached toward him again, not out of fear now but out of trust, touching his hand with a soft, trembling paw, and something warm filled the human's chest, pushing aside the rage that had nearly consumed him. He knelt down slowly, letting the cub press its forehead against his palm, and the entire forest seemed to watch the moment, the wind growing softer, the air calming as if the moon itself breathed a sigh of relief. But far above the jungle, in the skies where starships hovered, the story did not end. Hundreds of eyes watched from ships belonging to different species, merchants, travelers, scouts, soldiers, who had received emergency distress signals from Virales 9. They expected to see poachers winning. They expected to see destruction. They expected to see another planet added to the long list of tragedies in the galaxy. But what they saw instead stunned them into silence. One single human standing over the defeated bodies of heavily armed poachers. One human who fought off an entire squad with nothing but instinct, rage, and love for children who were not even his own. Cameras recorded everything. Sensors locked onto his every movement. Communication channels exploded with shocked voices. Is that a human? One captain whispered. How did one do that alone? Asked another. What kind of species fights like that for children who are not theirs? Whispered a third, her voice trembling with fear and respect. In minutes, the footage began spreading across the galaxy. Screens in markets, holowalls in starports, military control rooms, council chambers, and private homes all flickered with the same scene. The quiet human standing like a warrior forged from fire, gently holding an alien cub while surrounded by the wreckage of poacher armor. And everywhere across the galaxy, species who had mocked humanity, who had called humans weak, soft, emotional, unnecessary in galactic matters, fell silent. Back in the jungle, the alien elders slowly approached the human, their robes glowing faintly under the bioluminescent trees, and one of them bowed deeply, a gesture never given to outsiders. Human, the elder said softly, today you showed us something we didn't know your kind carried. You showed us a heart fierce enough to break iron. The human shook his head humbly, replying quietly, I didn't do anything special. They were just children. But the elder stepped closer, his voice firm but emotional. That is exactly why you are different. Many races fight for power. Many fight for territory. Many fight for pride. But you, he gently placed a hand over the human's chest. You fight for the innocent. You fight because something in your heart refuses to let wrong continue. The human lowered his eyes, embarrassed, not used to praise, not used to being the center of anything. But beneath his discomfort, a quiet truth rested. He didn't fight because he wanted glory. He fought because those cubs had cried. He fought because he couldn't stand cruelty. He fought because humanity, despite all its flaws, had a fire that burned for what was right. High above, the galaxy continued reacting. Some alien generals watched the footage with fear, whispering, if even one human can do this, what happens if they all get angry? Other leaders watched with respect, realizing humans were not a species to be dismissed anymore. Some groups who had hurt humans before suddenly began erasing evidence of past insults, wanting no trouble. And among all this chaos, one thing spread across every star system like wildfire. A single message. Do not harm the children of other species, not if a human is nearby. On Virales 9, night fell, stars glowing above the jungle canopy as parents prepared to take their cubs home. The cubs refused to leave the human's side at first, clinging to his legs, chirping softly in a language he didn't understand but somehow felt in his heart. He gave each of them a small gentle pat, whispering, "You're safe now." And the way their tiny eyes softened made his heart ache with a strange warm pride he didn't expect to feel for children not his own. Their parents watched with soft smiles, tears glistening, and one father said quietly, "Our cubs will grow up hearing your name." The human looked away, embarrassed again, but grateful that as he prepared to leave the clearing, a sudden blue shimmer filled the sky, a massive council ship descending slowly, its lights shaking the trees as it landed. Soldiers stepped out, armored but peaceful, bowing to the human as they approached. The commander spoke first, voice steady but humbled. "Human, your actions have changed more than you know. The council wishes to speak with you." The human tensed slightly, unsure what he was stepping into, but calm. The cub he saved tugged his sleeve gently, giving him a tiny nod of encouragement. He smiled, touched the cub's head one last time, and followed the commander as he walked toward the ship. The entire forest stood in silence. Alien families, soldiers, glowing creatures hidden in the trees, even the wind seemed to pause. And as he reached the ship ramp, he felt dozens of eyes on him, from the ground to the stars, watching a single human who refused to turn away from crying children. A single human who changed the meaning of fear and respect in one day. A single human whose fury had shaken a moon. And as the ship doors closed behind him, one truth echoed across the galaxy. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not passive. Humanity was not small. Humanity was dangerous, when the innocent were harmed. And the galaxy would never forget the day a lone human fought for alien cubs, and made the universe witness true fury.